It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans, and I am your host. I'm glad to see a ton of you out there this morning live on our website. Thank you very much for joining with us. You have a couple of options out there about where you can find our show, including America's Voice Now, PatriotFB.com, the Citizens Action Network, which is CAN. You can also find us on constitutionclub.ning.com. So make sure that you're doing everything in your power to ally yourself and find other patriots in your area. Constitutionclub.ning.com has a great site which enables you to, they've got, 3,200 county little microsites out there. So it enables you to find folks in your local community that you should ally yourself with. You know, we talked, you're in our third segment, if you're coming in late. We talked about how John Kerry has made the statement that in the event that a two-state solution can't be reached under his terms and conditions, and it was kind of interesting because he kind of threw out the idea that there's going to come a time where I'm going to say, this is it, take it or leave it. Who the heck is John Kerry to to tell anybody take or leave anything? I mean, lurch, for crying out loud, right? Dictating the rules for the world to live by. I don't care what you think of the two-state solution, the one-state solution, Israel, Palestine. I don't even care. Just the hubris and the arrogance of John Kerry to stand there and state what the world should do. I mean, I wouldn't trust the judgment of John Kerry and Barack Obama as to whether or not I should give my dog Alpo or Gravy Train. Why would I want to form a global economic and political system based on their opinions and ideology? Jeez whiz. But anyway, my point was, why is it that he actually has the nerve to state that Israel will become an apartheid state if they don't do what he says, but he's ignoring the economic and political apartheid right here in our own country? If you missed that segment, go back and catch it, because it was a worthwhile one. Our second segment was many judges are revolting, especially low-level magistrate judges. And I don't mean any slight to them. That's their phrase, low-level magistrate, because these are not the guys who sit and hear the bigger cases or actually sit on appellate court panels. But these magistrates, these are the guys who do all the heavy lifting, and a lot of them are pushing back on this Fourth Amendment abuse. They're in our corner. However few they may be, I don't know. However numerous they may be, I don't know. But the article will shed some light on it for you. And I applaud their efforts. Meanwhile, you've got judges sitting in appeals cases that are actually stockholders of the companies they're making rulings on. Hello? Talk about a conflict of interest. And then our third article that was related to this judges issue was that the federal Supreme Court is about to rule this week. They're going to be hearing cases on cell phone searches without a warrant. Really now? Well, I seem to remember Thomas Jefferson saying the following quote to us in 1820, where he had plenty of time to observe what had been happening during the course of the period of time between when our Constitution was ratified or created, if you will, because he was part of it, all the way up to 1820, a fully 30-some-odd years later, right? You seem to consider judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions. It's a very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. The Constitution has erected no such single tribunal. Well, I'll take Jefferson's word, imperfect as it may be, and imperfect as it may be remembered, any day over the tyrants and the traitors who sit on our Supreme Court and deem that they have the right to rule and determine your constitutional rights. Rights given to you by God and nature, not by men. Nor by doctors who've been telling us for the longest time that, don't worry, take this little pill and you'll feel much better. Really? 50% of the world's drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, we're not talking about illegal or illicit drugs here. 50% of all the world's pharmaceutical drugs are ingested here in the United States of America. 5% of the world's population, we're gobbling down 50% of the chemicals. Does it occur to you that a torrent of drugs is being used and combined with massive campaigns of propaganda so that you will willingly give up your liberties and your freedoms? How else would you get the only country left on the planet, the only country ever, in fact, to base itself on the rule of law and the rights of the consent of the governed? There's no other government in history that's ever had that. So we flood our population with dangerous antidepressants, which now are being shown for what they are. They're increasing the risk of self-harm in children and young adults. And I dare say it's not only them. Why are we giving antidepressants at high dosages to children? When I was a kid in school, your inattentiveness was called daydreaming, not ADHD. And oh, by the way, here's a pill. But it's really not about behavior. What it is about the idea that since we, at our generation, and I'm assuming there's no children watching this program, although they're certainly welcome to, our generation is too obstinate, hard-headed, and we remember this thing called freedom and liberty. But a younger generation brought up under layers upon layers upon layers of antidepressants, mind-altering chemicals, indoctrination, behavioral modification, they won't. Combine the stupor of antidepressants with endless mind control through propaganda, video, games, movies, a stream, a torrent of input, stimulation. And you can envision the American population strapped to a chair with their eyes held open by toothpicks, forced to watch a movie under the guise of education, re-education, while pumped full of mind-altering chemicals that make you susceptible, malleable, easily manipulated. That's what it's really about. Well, let me remind you that there's a history that goes back all the way to the 1980s about antidepressants and violence. Not to mention, there are a list of school shootings that resulted directly from antidepressants. And there's a website out there called SSRI Stories, serotonin reuptake inhibitors. That's what they stand for. That's what SSRI stands for. And if you're given an antidepressant and you're told by the doctor it's an SSRI, you know what it is. It's a piece of mind control poison. Would you willingly take or give to your child a pill full of poison? No. Would you willingly give your child an LSD tablet? Of course not. Why would you give your child selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors? Prozac is one of the names under which, this is the laundry list of all of these different drugs that are. Zoloft is in there, Prozac is in there, all of these different, Celexa is in there, Cymbalta is in there. These are all antidepressant, And by the way, isn't it interesting that some of this stuff, have you ever noticed that the stuff that you're seeing on television about a drug that's supposed to solve the problems of a person with diabetes, as an example, has warnings on there that sound suspiciously like an antidepressant warning about suicidal ideations and blah, 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 blah. Wait a minute. I watched this commercial about a guy who said he was complaining about nerve problems in his feet because he had diabetes. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, diabetes will destroy the nerve endings, and that's one of the reasons why people who have diabetes oftentimes lose limbs and or digits. It destroys the nerve endings. So why is it that this guy is taking a medication to deaden the pain, and it's got an antidepressant in it that causes suicidal ideations? SSRI Stories has ssristories.org. Find it yourself. Do your homework. Do your due diligence. Share this. Spread this. Give it to everyone and anyone that you know, because the odds and the risk that somebody in your family is on an antidepressant or someone within your circle of influence are so great that if you don't know anyone that's not on antidepressants, you're one in about, 25 million. You must live under a rock or in a treehouse somewhere. Or, you live out in the middle of the desert and you eat snails or something. Because 50% of the country is taking this crap. SSRIstories.org is a collection of 5,000 stories. 5,000! All of them have appeared in media, either newspaper, television, scientific journals, medical journals, what have you. All of them involve prescription drugs that were mentioned during the course of the story and in which the drugs may be linked to a variety of adverse outcomes. Many of them included violence. See, here's the problem. First of all, the pharma tyrants in the country don't really give a rat's rear end about whether or not you live, die, or otherwise, as long as you continue to buy the pill. Secondarily, your government is promoting and mood brightening because life sucks. The economy's in the dumper. Nobody's got a flippin' job. Our government is in a tyrannical overreach. We live in a flippin' police state. Just take this pill and your little mood will be brightened right up. Trust us. What they neglect to tell you is that if you're taking high doses of this and you suddenly cut yourself off of them because you come to the awareness that it's really not good for you, then you're likely to commit suicide. It's possible that you could go off half-cocked and not only commit suicide, but decide that you're going to take out somebody else with you. These aren't rare stories. These are very, very commonplace stories. I'd love to know if all of these bankers that have recently been jumping off buildings have been taking SSRIs. For the record, I posted an article that you should read this morning on our Facebook page about how Wall Street mega bankers hold $680 billion in life insurance on their employees, with the bank as the payee, not the guy or girl's family. And when questioned about it, federal regulators, this was a Freedom of Information Act request, how much are these banks holding? $680 billion? And the federal regulators came back and said, sorry, that's a trade secret. Shh. Can't tell you. Trade secret. I'd like to know how many of these bankers that have just recently died under very suspicious circumstances, most of them, by the way, out of J.P. Morgan, all of which had a bank life insurance policy on them that paid J.P. Morgan, why the federal bank regulators would refuse an FOIA request and defend the secretive life insurance policies. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, you know, Hillary Clinton came out yesterday and said something about, yes, I was the one who wrote the grand, great right-wing conspiracy or something. You know something? Nobody called her a quack. Nobody called her a conspiracy theorist. For the record, that was a CIA term that was generated to dissuade people from having those theories. And if you think that it's limited just to that, I also posted up this morning that, and you'll not hear anything about this in the mainstream media, that AOL, Google, Yahoo, Apple, Silicon Valley, a $3 billion settlement on an antitrust suit about all of them colluding together to say, listen, you don't steal my employees and I won't steal yours. Huh? Don't worry, just give them all some Prozac. Nobody will ever know the difference. A little unfair if you were one of the workers who was trying to move up the chain and you thought that, well, AOL's holding me back, so maybe I should go over to Google. Or maybe I'm here at Google and it's just not going the way I want to and I think I'm entitled to better. Maybe I should go to Apple. Sorry, we're not taking Google employees at this time. But if you like, we'd be happy to send you to a short-term behavioral therapy session where you'll get some nice little pills that will help you feel so much better about what you're doing. For the first 90 days, please stay away from high ledges. I mean, you've got to be flipping kidding me. I can't tell you. There's another one. There's a whole nother website out there, by the way, about all of these school shootings that have been tied to these antidepressants. I mean, folks, we're talking hundreds of them. And this was updated as of 2012, so there's probably some that have occurred that they haven't even put in here. I mean, did you know that Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, the guys who did the Columbine shooting, were on them? Probably not, right? Do you know that John Hinckley swallowed 4 Valiums just before he went to shoot the president? It was back in 1981. See, here's the problem, folks. You're being toyed with. Your mind is being toyed with by a bunch of mad scientists. These people are the equivalent of Mengele, experimenting on you. Andrea Yates, the woman who drowned 5 of her children, She was loaded with that crap. What would make a mother drown 5 of her children? There's nothing natural in the world that could make a mother do that. But she'd been taking Effexor, an SSRI. Afterwards, by the way, after she was convicted of murdering her children 4 years later, Wyeth Pharmaceuticals added the homicidal ideation to the drug's list of rare adverse events. Homicidal ideation? Why would, unless there was something in it for your government, why would a government allow a drug like that to hit the marketplace and be taken by anybody? Not just suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation. Big difference. One is I take me out. The other is I take out me and everybody around me. That's like going into the bank and that's like going up to the movie counter and saying, I didn't like the movie. I want my money back and everybody else's. What we have is a nation that is using the pharmaceutical industry to create a society full of mental zombies who are living under the propaganda and the indoctrination, the re-education of a nation of freedom and liberty-loving people to dependent slaves. And that, ladies and gentlemen, sums it up. Pharma tyrants, political tyrants, they're all the flippin' same. It's the only way to get you to willingly give up your liberties and your freedoms. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Pentagon to destroy $1 billion in ammo. That defies the law. But, of course, law doesn't matter unless it's applied to you and me, the peasantry out there who, happened to shoot a king's deer or stepped on the king's land or drank the king's water or, peed on the king's tree, right? Pentagon's going to destroy $1 billion in ammunition in direct violation of the law that says all ammo that's found to be in excess or obsolete has to be redistributed to the American people. Not destroyed, sold, revenue recovered, population benefited, but not under the regime of the tyrant. We'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Please communicate with me directly by email. You can do so by going to or sending me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. We'll be back in just a moment.